What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of That Great Podcast. Today, we have James Murphy. He's an entrepreneur and fellow public adjuster. He's the owner of Murphy ETC Claims Consulting. And today, we're going to get to pick his brain a little bit. He's been in the game a lot longer than I have, so I'm going to learn a lot. We're going to talk a lot about insurance claims and just running a business. So, James, welcome.
Thank you very
Great
much
to
for
have
having
you
me.
on, man.
Absolutely.
So let's open up. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you got into public adjusting and entrepreneurship in general. Did you have
Okay.
other businesses, stuff like
Got
that?
you. No, until I had a claim at my house
Okay.
for a hurricane, and that was my first exposure with a public adjuster at the time.
What year was this?
Oh, good question. Bad time to ask me. It was when we had the Wilma Katrina storm, so that was
Okay.
quite a while
05?
ago. Yeah, like 05,
Yeah.
06, and I had a loss. And then I got exposed to a realtor recommended this public adjuster, came over. We talked about the loss, signed up, saw the process, and then I was so thrilled about how quickly they were able to get me to pre-loss condition, before the storm hit me, causing roof damage, causing some small interior damage. And I started recommending this guy to community in my neighborhood, all the neighbors. And he's like, you're doing a great job of promoting. And he goes, this is 60 to 70% of our business is marketing, getting out there, getting the word out that we exist, because it was back in that
Oh,
day,
yeah.
it was word of mouth, it was door
Right.
hangers, it was door knocking, that kind of
Yeah.
process, not the world that we are in now.
Right.
And he said, if you ever are interested in the business, let me know. Funny enough, it was a company that I was working for doing marketing and marketing management. And they had to close their doors because they factored their company. They basically, getting money for against receivables, and they didn't prepare for it correctly,
Mm.
which was a good valuable lesson on,
For- for you,
entrepreneurship and
yeah.
business ownership. I had to look for another job.
Wow.
And went and studied for the test, read the book, highlighted it like 17 different colors, got it into the coconut, what the tort statutes and laws
All
were,
that, yeah.
took the test, failed it by 1 point,
Oh, shit.
had to come back and take the test again. A week and a half later, I got a 90%
Nice.
and cruised through it because I'm like, it was
It's a spread, like a lot of
Yeah,
information.
a
Like, to
lot.
study
You have
for.
to
It's not just
massive
property.
information. No,
It's
no, no.
maritime. It's air.
You're learning stuff that the
all
attorneys
lines. Yeah,
learn,
it's
on the
literally
tort statutes and laws that
madness.
apply for it. And
Madness.
it was brutal. But then it was trial by fire, how I learned the business, marketing, getting the business, getting the lead. That's the first step. And then walking through the process with another seasoned adjuster to kind of show you the ropes.
Yeah.
And then, writing everything down, learning the rules, what you can say, what you can't say, what you should say, what you shouldn't say. Not anything nefarious, but
Right.
less is more in this business.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything other than give the facts of the loss.
Right.
It's not interpretation.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's how I kind of
That's how
got
you
into
broke
the
into it.
business.
And so, how long were you with that firm? Before
That
you
first
broke
firm, it was
Yeah.
about maybe a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
And then I went to another firm with a fantastic lady by the name of Nancy Dominguez, who now is the executive director of Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters,
Right.
our advocacy group
Yeah.
that does our continuing education. They get us in line with what DFS
Compliance,
expects. They
everything.
lobby on
Yeah.
our behalf
Yeah.
to give us representation in the government.
So she ran a firm before.
She had
I
a
didn't
firm,
know that.
Florida
Oh, wow.
Association, Florida Adjusting Services Team, FAST Claims. It was great.
Nice. Yeah.
And she beat
sold
me
it?
up. She tortured me. I mean, she made me learn a construction, made me get the software to understand the nature of what we're representing, because you got to know what you're talking about.
Right.
And then the devil's in the details.
Yeah, man.
Document everything, photograph everything, and prepare your file like it's going off your shelf into the courthouse,
Right.
and be ready.
Yeah.
And to this day, as the executive director of FAPIA, she doesn't play.
Yeah.
She follows up with me. Are you following the guidelines? Your
Yeah.
contract is good. She's like, you're one of my own.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you have
I
to.
know you know
Yeah,
ethics and
yeah.
you're going to follow them. And if not, right cross. And she's like a godsend to
Yeah,
me.
no,
Very
she really
good
is
friend.
awesome. I've had a few interactions with her more as a customer of
Yeah.
FAPIA, and
Yeah.
she's always been helpful.
Amazing.
Very receptive. I'm always surprised she's
How
the
she gets
person
to everybody.
answering. Yeah, I'm like, what the hell?
I don't know. I think
It's
they
crazy.
cloned her is what it is. But thank goodness, because we
Yeah,
need people
shout
like
out
her.
Nancy Dominguez. Honestly, she's
Shout out
awesome.
to Nancy. We love you.
Yeah. So when you're kind of going through now, we're ways away from the Katrina days.
Mhm.
How have things changed?
Okay,
from
good
when you
question.
started?
The world has changed.
Yeah.
We in 2022, DeSantis basically made the decision with the powers that be to remove the attorney's statutory fees and costs that would come from the insurance company once the claim would settle. That was part of how it worked. That changed the face of what it used to be. Why did that change? Because the attorneys were talking attorney to attorney, and their clocks are ticking. And there's a certain amount of time that they are going to allow that claim to
Mature.
evolve, mature, season, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call
Yeah.
it. And then that takes into account the other side of we have the cost of the insured and whatever the valuation that was determined and settled for the uh, impact on the coverages,
Yeah.
coverage A through coverage whatever. And then now we also have the attorney's fee. Now the homeowner has to burden that cost. And that was really, I think, an injustice to the homeowner because that put pressure on the insurance company to really negotiate
Mhm.
and not just sit on the file and allow it to move forward,
Right.
because they know that your client's paying you. It's not our responsibility.
Right.
And it didn't motivate them more, I think.
Yeah.
And that changed it a lot. A lot of language has changed in the policy to really limit the policies now. We've got water caps of daily claims, specific things that need to be uh, identified, or things that have to happen to a property in order for there to even be coverage. And that makes our job that much harder.
Right.
So it requires you to really know policy. It requires you to really know your job, and to really know how to use and leverage experts
Hmm.
to help build your file to show the carrier why they should be paying that homeowner and giving them the money that their homeowner needs to deserve. See, we're not in the business to fight necessarily with the insurance company. We've got to collaborate with them. We've got to work with them because that's the other side. There has to be a level of respect for both sides
I
of the
agree.
table.
I'm with you, man.
But they don't like public adjusters because we really, sorry about
No,
that.
you're good.
We really are going to go for every penny that homeowner has,
Yeah.
and we're going to know all the coverages that we have. And if we do our work right, we're going to recommend the right things a homeowner does to keep them on that top of the hill that they're
Right.
good, being a good homeowner,
Right.
preparing and preserving property, maintaining it, providing documentation, giving access to the property.
Right.
And our job is to facilitate that. Orchestrate would be
Yeah.
a better word.
How do you feel? There's a couple angles I want to go through there, but how do you feel on that specific note? Do you think it's because just a little background. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I made an effort when I became a public adjuster. I started connecting with both sides, and they're a lot more active on the defense side
Mm,
and all that. So I'm
mhm.
always seeing the shit talk about public adjusters,
Right.
and I wonder though. I want is it a thing of kind of the few spoiling it for the rest of the good? Is some of it partly in the marketing slogans? Like, for me, like it really does sound like nail on chalkboard when I read or hear maximize your claim because it just had I know what they're saying,
Mhm.
but the connotation there is, so like what do you think contributes to that combative nature that we have between the carriers and public adjusters?
Good question. I'm going to say depends. That's a
Mhm.
famous answer
Yeah.
every attorney gives you.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
depends,
yeah.
right? They love to see that. So why? Because they never pigeonhole themselves.
Right,
As a public adjuster, my opinion personally is I've seen bad players on all sides.
right.
I've seen the bad
Yeah,
attorneys for the homeowner. I've seen
yeah,
the bad attorneys for the insurance company. We've seen the adjusters who are
for
very
sure.
aggressive. And everybody has to follow the rules.
Yeah,
Okay. But within that, adjusters have gotten a bad rap because we're there, boots on the street right after the storm within the requirement of when we can get out there. And we're there to help the homeowner. Everybody seems to think that the adjuster is competing for dollars. Okay. If I get out there first, I get my 10% on a catastrophic loss, 20% up to on a daily loss. And that prevents the roofers, the contractors from having additional money. But the service we provide, we're not gonna maximize the claim, we're going to legitimize the case.
I love that.
We're going to show the facts as they are. You like them or don't, it's not my job. My job is to come to the table with the facts.
Yeah,
This is the truth. I'm not making it up. It's got mold, it's got water damage, it's got a leaky roof. Yeah, depreciation has to come into effect, all those factors.
yeah,
But there's other things that the carriers are sometimes missing. I don't know if it's convenient, inconvenient, or what's protocol. I
yeah,
don't work with the on behalf of the insurance company.
right.
But I know that our estimates are going to take everything into effect. and it is subject to additions, deletions as construction continues. We may find additional damages that we bring to the carrier's attention.
Right.
Why should you not pay that homeowner? They've been paying those premiums for year after year after year as they're required, and all they're asking is a fair shake. They're not trying to build the Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
They're trying to get their home, which is personal. It's here.
Yeah.
The business that's in the pocket, those people need to get back to providing incomes from other people that work for them, and they're responsible to that.
Right.
And they just want to get back to normalcy. I don't know why it's such a battle, and
Right.
it shouldn't really be.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. And what I've noticed as well with, at least with the interactions I've had, field adjusters, 98, 99% just doing literally what you said. They're hired, so to speak, by the insurance company, but they don't necessarily work for the insurance company
Right.
per se. And
Mhm.
they're, again, most of the ones that I've met, they're writing it up for what they see. You
Right.
know?
Yes, they
There's
are.
the one that's not that they're not writing it because they're trying to be nefarious, but I don't know what it is, but they just are stingy. And they don't want to write for
Right.
those subsequent consequent items.
Right.
Desk adjusters tend to be a little more combative, but at the end of the day, I'm like, and even in my marketing, when I'm speaking to a prospective client, and it's just not my nature, like I'm not going to demonize the other side.
No.
I feel like it delegitimizes me as the professional.
Right.
One, two, it's the system, it's not the people. Because at the end of the day, the field adjuster, desk adjuster, president of the insurance company, they're all people, right? But what really I think contributes to it is, and there's been some famous new, not as of late, well, maybe as of late with Ian, some things have come out as well, but there's history and documentation of games that are played
Yeah.
behind closed doors.
Correct. Yeah, we've seen that.
Speak a little bit to
Well,
that over
we've
the
seen
years.
that where adjusters were submitting, and there was, in Washington, there was adjusters coming in that were field adjusters were being told based on their testimony that they were being told to lower the amounts that they were writing into the claims or adjust it this way, adjust it that way. And the adjusters were saying, but this is the damages I saw. This is what I wrote it up for. And there was that kind of, I guess they called it an in-house battle between the desk examiner, the protocol. I don't know and can't really honestly speak about what's going on behind their closed doors. My goal is I'm not going to bother if they're getting combative. I'm not going to bother with if they want to fight with me. There's regulation that controls this process.
Yeah.
And that's what we use.
Right.
We submit the claim. They have to respond quickly.
Yeah.
We give them the notice of, per the statute, this is what it says that you have to respond back. Now, within, I think it's 6 or 7 days of getting any information, they have to respond.
Yeah.
We need to hold them accountable to that as
Yeah.
they hold us accountable, because we are there to prepare that estimate, that proof of loss, get it in within a certain amount of time. They now require us to get that contract in the hands of the homeowner within a certain amount of time. So they've got a clock on us.
Yeah.
We need to hold them accountable to the clock on them.
Right.
And a lot of times they wipe their hands clean with that clock.
Yeah.
Document it.
Have you been, yeah, and that's a really good, because you're making me think of a claim I'm working now. We'll talk off camera more about it, but have you noticed since the reforms, and more so this year, and it ramps up, but you noticed kind of a brushing off more than
Actually, I'll tell you, for some of the daily claims that I've been dealing
Yeah.
with, and there's not as many as it used to be. I
Sure.
mean, the market has changed, the business has changed.
yeah,
I see that the carriers are doing their best to respond to within the guidelines. Now, remember, there hasn't been a significant storm for a while,
right.
so the claim count on their desk is lower.
Mm.
The policy
So then-
reforms that have been made are so stringent
Yeah.
as to what they will and won't pay, so narrow,
Yeah.
that there's a lot less of the daily loss claims.
Right.
Okay. And they're not as consistent
Right.
coming from homeowners. Whether or not they have a public adjuster, they may have a contractor or a roofer that's working
Yeah.
with the carrier to submit their estimate. Okay. They can't negotiate because that's not allowed.
Right.
That's the unlicensed practice of adjusting, but they can't submit it. But they can hire experts to assist them in that process,
Right.
and then get the homeowners to follow up.
I think that's really important for you to elaborate on for people that watch that could be investors, property owners, whatever. They may have their preferred contractors that they're working with. Could have been someone they met at the door, and they may be told more often than not, we'll handle everything. We'll get you paid fairly.
Right.
Let's dive into that. Why is that an issue, and why is that actually not allowed?
Well, I don't want to say it's not allowed, because the carrier will communicate with the roofers on what their scope of work is, and they will discuss. They can't negotiate, from my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish we had Nancy here.
Yeah.
Um, um, but they can discuss what the scope of the damage is. Why is the value of the adjuster so important? Because the adjuster can say, well, look, you're saying it's $10 a square, and we're saying it's $20 a square. Let me talk to you about why we believe that position. That's where we come in. We bring in the facts. We get the information from the roofer and present it correctly. Um, my concern is roofers are roofers. They're very good at what they do, and we need them. And there's a lot of necessity in Florida of the roofs that need to be fixed, replaced completely. But they don't know about the interiors of the property. Who's addressing that?
Or the fence.
What about the personal property?
Yeah.
What about the loss of
Right.
use? What about the mold component? What about drying out
Yeah.
that property properly? And who's going to make sure that that client gets paid for that so it's not out of their claim number,
Right.
but it's the additional part of the claim? Coverage A, dwelling, coverage B, other structures. A lot of times that just goes by the wayside.
Right.
But if you've got $6,000 or $10,000 of coverage and you've got $15,000 worth of damage on that other structure, at least it needs to be addressed for the full amount of that policy limit.
Right.
Okay. And then the personal property, that's huge.
Yeah.
Now there's a movement of really getting the apps and the technologies catching up to help the adjuster to be able to help the homeowner
Right.
to label, identify the valuation of the
Yeah.
personal property. That's a lot of
It
money.
really is.
You can't replace what you lost, but we can at least get you a dollar amount to start doing the rebuild and going back to normal.
Right.
Okay. And then, of course, the loss of use. If your house has got no roof, you can't live in there. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
It usually needs to be an incurred expense, but it needs to be properly documented. So the word I use for the public adjuster is we're the orchestrator.
Right.
We bring in that quality roofer. We work with the client's favorite contractor. We're not competing against them.
Yeah.
We are collaborating with them.
Right.
That's the point. And I think that it seems to be on the streets where it's us versus them
Yeah.
and them and them and them. Not at all. We're all
Yeah.
working to help the homeowner.
Right.
And I think that needs to really be the focus
Yeah.
on
And
moving forward.
a lot of the times too, I mean, what the adjuster is going to do across the entire claim value, not to use the word maximize, but you're going to ultimately, I get as close, if not the full value that that contractor was estimating for.
Correct.
That's the fight.
Right.
So instead of the roofer individually trying to combat all of these things, that's what
Mhm.
the adjuster's for. So
Right.
it's a very important distinction. So let's circle back to kind of the career here. So when did you open your own firm? And tell me a little bit about kind of what that was like.
I worked for 4 different companies before I decided to go I could do this on my own.
Okay.
We're a small outfit. We're not, the huge, and I don't necessarily wanna be. I'd rather call myself a boutique adjuster.
Yeah.
I pick and choose the clients. I
Yep.
like to go after the commercial on certain seasons, and then certain times I'll deal with the residential clients, and depending on it. Now, of course, if I get a call from a client that I've serviced and helped in the past, they get priority,
Right.
because I consider my extended family members. I take care of them as if they were
Yeah.
family members, and that helps for the referral as an entrepreneur. One happy client is 5 to 6 referrals down the road, and that's a big part of it. I don't care how much marketing you get or how much marketing you put out there. If you're not doing good by the clients you represent, your name is going to be trashed pretty quick.
Right.
And I try not to let that happen. You're always going to have the unhappy customer.
Yeah.
Work with them to make them happy.
Right.
Work on that service. But I after about working with 4 different companies, I got good experience, and it was a total of maybe 8 years, 7 years that I worked with them, maybe a little bit less. And I felt that I could represent them my way, so I decided to go for it. And it has not been easy, and it's very difficult right now more than ever. It's
Yeah.
very difficult. A lot of adjusters have to go to their plan B to maintain their lifestyle,
Right.
their bills, the expenses.
Yeah.
It's not easy because of the restrictive policy language, the difficulties against us. Right now, there's carriers that don't even want to put our name on the check as an assignee, but we have a contract with the client.
Right.
And that's going to be a fight because they don't have a right to interfere in my contract with the property owner.
Right.
And I don't see it in their policy where it says we can strike out your public adjuster from
Yeah.
that policy language. It's not in the policy language. So that's going to have to be addressed
Yeah.
because we're here to help the homeowner, not hurt them.
Yeah.
And we move those claims along. And let me be very clear, when I deal with the field adjusters, 90% of the time they're thrilled that there's a public adjuster on that file because they know they're going to get the documents quick.
Right.
I'm going to move on that file. I am self-motivated. Yes, I make my percentage based on what I service that client, but above and beyond that, I'm a professional. And held accountable to that homeowner to move that file quick
Yeah.
rather than the homeowner take on a second job, become their own public adjuster.
Right.
And it's very challenging,
Yeah.
And I think as an entrepreneur, if we approach it that way, even in these difficult times, I call these the dark times,
Yeah.
because it's tough out there,
Yeah.
and it makes it very tough for us to do what we want to do, which really is, yes, have a great claim count, but also service these people so we can
Right.
grow our business.
Right.
I'm licensed in several states for necessity, and also I love working in other states, learning the different roles that I can do in the other parts of the country, North Carolina, South Carolina, for instance. The construction's different. The language on the policy is a little different. They approach it a little bit different. I love the learning,
Yeah.
and it's great. And I love representing people who need help,
Right.
especially about these impactful storms.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that with the current market. It definitely has, even from when I started, it's definitely changed, gotten harder, and you seen the volume definitely go down. So one of the things that I've considered doing, and I am licensed in North Carolina and Texas,
Okay.
um, is that kind of for someone that's based in Florida specifically, is that a direction that you would recommend most, or let's say as a industry, Florida public adjusters, should they start looking at branching out into other states
I would say you
cautiously? Because
I
it's
would say
very,
you need to really understand
yeah,
and do your homework and research how that state operates.
right,
Texas is very different from
right,
Florida. Um, for the Florida adjuster, the language and the requirements for us on our license allows us to have reciprocity in other states
right,
because we have very stringent rules on this.
yes,
So if you can get a license in Florida, you must be knowing something.
right,
All right. But educate yourself.
yeah,
Educate yourself on the construction in those areas. Get out there. Go on a weekend trip with your significant other and get to know the neighborhoods and the properties and get a feel for how they build them.
yeah,
Go to properties that are being fixed or being renovated or being built from the ground up. Understand the construction of it. And then you better know the policy language and the statutes that govern public adjusting so that you don't get yourself into trouble and
right,
you adhere to the rules. And then you've got to market into that community,
yeah,
a lot of my North Carolina and South Carolina clients were clients that lived in Florida that relocated, and
oh,
they said, "We had a storm. Get your butt up here."
yeah.
I said, "Well, I'll have to get a license." They said, "I want you to get your license yesterday. Go."
It is that
And
quick almost. You can almost just
yeah,
apply.
you have to get the proper
Yeah,
bond, and you
right,
have to do all the proper documentation,
right,
and then you have to have your contract follow the guidelines
yes,
of the state. That's very important.
yeah,
Don't just use a Florida contract. Our contracts are tough, very tough. What, 6 or 7 pages?
yeah,
I mean, it used to be 1 or 2. Remember the day back in the day? My days, not yours.
yeah, yeah,
Make sure you have everything that you need in there. And go online, talk to different attorneys, see what they're recommending. Contact FAPIA,
mhm.
ask them for help. Hey, I need to develop a contract for Texas. Any recommendations?
Each state has their own APIA, right?
Right, right,
So you could
right, right. For the
always,
most part,
yeah,
I don't know all the states,
yeah,
but I know there's NAPIA, the
right,
National Association of Public Insurance Adjusters, and that's a great organization that's trying to help us and fight for us for our rights to be able to make a decent living.
yeah,
I don't know why everybody thinks that we shouldn't.
right,
I'm not a pariah.
yeah,
I'm here to represent my clients professionally,
right,
and I consider myself the adjuster's adjuster.
yeah,
Meaning, not only do I do adjusting, but I do appraisal work.
right,
I've even done umpire work, not a lot, but I have been selected as an umpire. And one of the times it was the insurance adjuster,
really,
the appraiser for the insurance company that recommended me to be considered as the
that's
umpire
crazy,
because they know I'm going to be fair.
right,
And yeah, I am pro homeowner because I
yeah.
believe they have rights, but I think that everything is, like you said, a negotiation. We got to
Right.
look at the numbers, and it needs to make sense.
And on that, this is something I've kind of come to realize, and how it applies in the professional practice. I'd like to ask you. So I've done a couple appraisals. I haven't done umpire work. I just don't think I'm there yet. But I've done some appraisals and obviously the public adjusting. But my approach, whether I'm the public adjuster or the appraiser, in terms of documenting and estimating the loss, it's the same, right?
Now,
So I
it's
mean, it's I'm not gonna write it one way.
no, no,
So
no,
it really just comes down to, we call it like you see it.
no. Let me give you a good example
yeah,
that would make sense. I think at least it did for me that it was the light switch that went on. I send an estimate over to the insurance company. and then they get a response back after they've inspected the loss and they've maybe submitted an undisputed amount, right? The first payment that they issued, and we're not in agreement, so we submit a supplemental. Then they come back to me and say, okay, make an offer or a counter offer to what we have presented. Why would I start the negotiations with counter offering the estimate that I wrote? Would that mean that my estimate wasn't legitimate from the beginning? I wrote it in good faith.
Yeah.
And so did the homeowner signing
Right.
that proof of loss. We believe this to be the true value of the loss.
Right.
Why would I negotiate against myself? Does that mean
Exactly.
I wrote something that wasn't or didn't need to be in there? Absolutely
Right.
not. And I'm going to hold to that line. I would say to the carrier, rather than ask me to negotiate against myself, which as an entrepreneur, that makes no sense. As a businessman, why would I ever
Yeah.
do that? I would say to them, come back to us with an offer for consideration and then
Right.
explain to me why. And then let's look at the details because we've got to look at the construction costs. We've got to
Yeah.
look at the materials. We've got to look at what got damaged and does your number make sense for the damage that's on this property?
Right.
And then as an appraiser, you're looking at it with the same set of eyes.
Right.
You're if you're representing the homeowner.
Right.
I've never represented the insurance company as an appraiser. Not sure that I ever would.
Yeah.
Not meaning I wouldn't want to. It's that I'm a public adjuster.
Yeah.
I
I
doubt
think
that they
they'd go
would
for
use us.
it.
Yeah. Remember, we sometimes wear the horns on the head. I think they believe.
Yeah.
But for my clients, I wear the halo.
Yeah.
I'm there to be that voice for them, advocate for
Right.
them. Consultant.
So let's talk about trying to bridge that gap. We were kind of getting into that before we started here. What is the way forward to kind of, and I feel like this is just society right now, but there's just partisan and team. I'm this team, you're that team. We're everywhere with everything. So in this particular industry and the way that we work, what do you think the way forward would be to kind of lower it and make it a little bit more like, I'm sure back in the day it was a little less combative.
Mhm.
And there's been abuses on both sides, right? So I'm
On all
not being
sides.
I'm not being rose colored and saying let's
Yeah.
kumbaya. But what would that path forward be? Is it, really increasing that line and that qualification to become a public adjuster as a starting point? Like, how do we make it better?
I would love for the decision makers in Tallahassee to bring in a bunch of public adjusters and sit and talk with us. I think that would be the first step. What's the dialogue? The dialogue needs to be with the decision makers who are putting forward this language in these, well, at least the insurance company wanting to put language into
Right.
these policies, and the decision makers have to say this makes sense or it doesn't with the DFS, the Office of Insurance Regulation, the decision makers, God help us, the lobbyists as well, that are out there saying, these public adjusters are problematic. Talk to us. Find out what is our motivation. Do they even know? Yeah, first off, of course, I want to make a living. I'm not trying to be a multimillionaire. I'm trying to represent the people that you represent. We're on the same side if they get to see it. Those are their
Damn.
constituents. That's your constituent. Those are the people that put you into power in the first place.
Yes,
Are you
sir.
listening to them? Are you hearing them when they go through the horror stories that I've walked in the door where the house is covered in mold? The client's sleeping in a tent in their backyard. Why?
Mm,
Where is the safety net to prevent that from happening? Where is the safety net when the clients feel like they're completely have lost their life? Who's advocating for them?
right.
Legislature needs to. The people in Tallahassee, the decision makers, need to put things in place to protect the people you represent. Guess what? The clients that are working for the insurance company, they're also homeowners. What happens when they get a loss and they have to go through the same process? They're people just like everybody else. Hear us, talk to us, find out what we are motivated by.
Mm,
Okay. Yeah, a little bit of the money for sure, but also the reasoning behind being a professional
right.
and why we want to go knock at that door to meet with that client when we're allowed to. Get that social media out there so people can see us, to get that lead generation so that we can get into the hands of the people that need us. I want to market just like anybody else. Why? Because I want to help these people. And I want to make sure that not as many bad players are allowed out there.
Mm,
And I think more teeth in the language of what happens when you find a bad player
yeah.
on all sides.
Right.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander, guys. And if you got people acting like an adjuster that are not licensed, yeah, sink the teeth into them. And
Yeah.
if you've got contractors negotiating, no, they're
Yeah.
not allowed to. We
Right.
know that they're not supposed to.
Right.
Get that teeth
But the
in
carriers
there.
play ball there because we're so removed at that point.
I know.
Like so that particular issue is
Yep.
they complain about it, but they play ball. So it's like, I don't know what you want us to do there.
Yeah, and I'm not in that conversation, so I can't
To
say they're
be-
doing wrong
right,
or doing right.
right.
Maybe they are just talking
Yeah,
numbers. Okay.
right.
So again, I want to work in collaboration
Right.
with the carriers and not say they're all wrong.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of these desk examiners really do want, I believe, I've run across them. A lot of them want to do right by the homeowner,
Mhm.
but we need to present it so it makes sense. The
Right.
estimate needs to be clear. It
Yeah.
needs to be clearly written. It needs to, don't put things in there that don't make sense for the property that you have.
Right.
And we all are using pretty much the same software, which is funny, Xactimate. So how are we making up things if we're all on the same platform? I
Mhm.
don't know. I would like to hear some of the people on the side of the insurance company to explain why they think we're just making it up,
Right.
putting in the fluff, as they call it,
Yeah.
or whatever is the new term in the
Yeah.
streets.
Yeah.
But I think the homeowners need to be heard. I'm a homeowner.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner. My clients are business owners and homeowners as well. They work for companies that have their own companies. They are the decision maker for who gets into positions of influence in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Start listening to us, because when it comes to major storms and people are being denied with a broad stroke brush, that means something needs to be looked at.
Let's
We
talk a
heard
little bit about
we
that.
heard
Yeah.
about that. We
With
heard that,
Helene and Milton last year.
yeah,
This
we heard
was-
that carriers were just calling it flood. But how did that roof get damaged by a flood? There's no logic to that. To
Right.
me, when I saw that, I had a client that the client said the carrier said there was no water damage. How did a flood get into a window up and towards the roof when they have those beautiful, nice decorative windows that allow the light in
Mhm.
on a flood when the flood was 4 foot? And then the carrier was saying you have all flood damage.
Right.
No, not at all. So they issued a denial. I
Yeah.
saw a client that called me. They got a denial in 3 days. I've never heard of a carrier giving a
Before
final
the
determination in 3 days.
For the
It might have been more, it might have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
less.
okay.
I can only go
Yeah.
on what the client told
right,
me,
right.
but I thought that was very
Yeah.
strange.
And it's one of those things too. Is a special. This was Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton came right back to back,
Mhm.
and that was a challenge for everybody.
Yeah.
Identifying damages and all that. But also there was the fact that there were cases like you're saying where it could have been a factor of both. Also, and in a
Absolutely.
lot of the cases, it was yes,
Absolutely.
there was a flood here.
Right.
I'm not
If it-
saying that
If it
there
meets
was
FEMA
no flood.
guidelines,
Yeah,
100%.
but everything above the flood line, why aren't we talking about that?
And I love
It-
working on flood
yeah.
claims. Why do I love working on flood claims? Because it's really one policy that everybody's
Right.
working off of. It's
Yeah.
a federal guideline.
Right.
Okay. And if you do your homework and you know it right and you work with good estimators, nudge, nudge, wink, wink,
Yeah.
shameless promotion for our services, develop an estimate. Normally I write within less than 10% of what the flood examiners write.
Right.
Sometimes I've been more conservative than they are. They
Yeah.
found stuff that I missed
Right.
because they do it all day long.
Yeah,
They
right.
eat and sleep
Yeah.
flood
that's- yeah,
damage. And they know some of the changes that happen quicker than we do.
Sure.
So we learn from that. And that's another big thing is
Yes.
we need to learn from each other.
Yeah.
I love learning from the field adjusters.
Yeah.
And I don't ever get combative with them. And even if they want to be argumentative, I say, okay, we agree to disagree. You write it as you see fit. I'm telling you here and now, this is what I believe the loss to be and the extent of the loss. It's coming. You'll
Yeah.
get my estimate right
Right.
away, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too with the field adjusters. I've never yet to, maybe I haven't been doing it long enough, but I've yet to get into any sort of like kind of verbal or argument sort of thing there. Because at the end of the day, the way I've always reasoned it is we can go back and forth on this. This should function as an appraisal meeting, but it's not. You're gonna write what you write. I'm gonna write what I write. You're not even issuing the check. You're gonna send that to the carrier.
Correct.
They're gonna pick it up. So like fighting with the field adjuster there on site.
Mhm.
You might as well save it for when you go to appraisal. Like that's
Right.
how I've always figured it. So
Right.
I try and just build rapport, like you say.
Yeah.
And again, for me, I'm just a lifelong learner. So I always treat that most of the times it's been that person's been doing it at least a couple of years more
Yeah.
than me, if not been doing it forever.
Yeah.
So I always go in with that, and I lead with that. I don't
Yeah.
try and puff up my chest and be like, well, I'm gonna bulldog my way through it. It's like
No.
you just look like an asshole. It's not
And
gonna
I
help
don't
you
think
in
it's a
the-
good strategy.
Yeah,
I'd rather not
Yeah.
be the big 800-pound gorilla in the room.
right.
I want to be the guy who's streamlined. I want to be the
Yeah, man.
ninja in the room. I
Right.
don't want you to see me come in until
Yep.
it's necessary. I will work with the carrier. I will put on the gloves and have a good round a bout of negotiations with
Right.
you, whether it's mediation or whatever.
Sure.
That's fine. As long as it's done ethically
Yeah.
and it's done professionally, we can agree to disagree, but let's remember not to be disrespectful in front of the
Always.
homeowner. You're
Yeah.
in their home. You can disagree with me, but let's be respectful. And adjusters, public adjusters, insurance adjusters, we all got to be on that
Yeah,
respectful
man.
level because people have just lost everything,
Yeah.
especially in catastrophic losses.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not just about our ego, like you said, it's about them.
Right.
Who's them? My client for me is the center of the universe. You know, they're the sun. The claim is the loss that we get them to the rebuild and the reconstruction. Okay. I always use this analogy
Yeah.
to the clients. And that my job is to be the satellite bouncing around and getting all that information so I can get it out to who needs it. You know, who needs that information? Build it, present the case, make it legitimate. And then if it comes to the client has to seek an attorney to represent them, work in cooperation with their client's attorney that they've chosen, and be the professional. Go to the deposition prepared, know your file, document your file very well. Keep record of all correspondence, all communication, all the information that you were required to do. Show that you met the requirements and the timeframes. Do your homework. It's tough
Yeah.
because a lot of times we can't get all those estimates out on a
Right.
catastrophic loss. So those are the exceptions to the rules, and
Yeah.
we've got to understand that. And there's got to be logic on both sides.
Right. And talking about building the file, so you touched on something there because where I first started, won't say names, but where I first started, it was more of just sign, worry
Get them
about,
in, get them going.
yeah, which for multiple reasons doesn't, especially today, doesn't work. But as I ventured out into my own and started just kind of doing things what I saw as the right way and just trying to do the best job I could do and be
Right.
the best adjuster I could be and
Right.
what, like, really trying to understand what it is to adjust a claim, right?
Mhm.
So just really building out my professional skills there. Building the file is not a passive like action. It's not just
Nope.
filing the claim and going to the first inspection and submitting the estimate and form. It's not that. And one thing, just as an example, in our daily outreach, sometimes because we're not getting feedback, we're not hearing from them, not getting the callback that was promised by end of day,
Mhm.
we're logging every single
Oh, yeah.
one of those.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd say to my clients, look, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that this doesn't go
Mhm.
to litigation.
Right.
Right? We're going to try and resolve this.
Correct.
But I promise you, if it gets there and if you decide to go that route, because it's their decision ultimately, I'm going to hand this file
Mm.
to the attorney and he's going to be able to run with it.
Right. And we
And-
can make recommendations. You know,
Yeah,
here's great
sure.
attorneys that clients have used in the past
Yeah.
that we collaborate with, and that we have like I have a recommended list of attorneys that changes all the time
Sure.
for clients depending on the area they're in, the
Right.
type of loss, whatever, of recommendations. It's not a referral.
Right.
It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
And it says in the information that I'm providing, you can use any Florida bar attorney.
Right.
We always tell the clients, make sure they have experience in the first party claim world. Make sure they have the knowledge base.
Yeah.
Make sure they understand the process. Make sure they're savvy enough to know how this evolution of when an attorney gets on board on the file works, whether they're going first with mediation, impasse is reached, then they file, and then they go to notice of intent and do all the things that attorneys do. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah.
I don't practice law. I don't claim to.
Yeah.
But I do try to surround myself with very intelligent attorneys because they're the think tank that helps me get educated.
Right.
That's why FAPIA and attending the conferences and getting the education and getting the knowledge gets me to be better. And we
Yeah.
have to constantly, like you said, lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I can tell you what I know today was what I knew from yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on tomorrow?
Right.
What is artificial
Especially in this,
intelligence
yeah,
coming in
yeah,
board?
man.
Okay. I'm already seeing the carriers using artificial intelligence to automatically respond to me, but you can see it looks like it's the old fax machine with the typo letters of an email that comes in. I'm like, this is 1960s,
Yeah.
man. Where is this coming
Bro,
from?
let me tell you something. I think
Yeah.
you're 100% spot on, and I think they got to tweak it because just yesterday, we got working a claim, got the LOR submitted, all that. We actually called in the claim. That's an important detail.
Yep.
We called in the claim.
I like to do
okay?
that too.
But this is why it's important. So we send in the LOR, right? Within a day. And with our package, our submission package, we have a formal request in a form for the policy, whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
send
yeah.
this in. Sometimes if we have the estimate ready and sworn proof of loss ready, we'll even send that in, right?
Correct.
Just for this one though, we sent in the preliminary stuff. not even 2 days later, I get a kickback. The LOR has been rejected. It's missing all the required components, missing the public adjuster's name and signature and license number, signature of all named insureds. I'm going down the bullet list. I'm looking at my LOR. I'm like,
It's all
no,
there.
it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
And you rejected something for no reason.
Yeah, so I messaged them back and I let them know, like, hey, look, here it is again. Take a look. But here's the funny part. They made in that letterhead, they made a point to mention this contract is what was it? Uh, not compliant and unenforceable. I was like, oh, nice throwing in the unenforceable, which has no credence for you, right? But you're throwing that into.
Yeah.
So they play, man. They play.
And I mean, that's your contract with the insured.
Right. So for them to say it's unenforceable is they're trying to get in between there.
Right.
And
or
I just
get
have
in
a good
between you and
relationship
your
with my client. Yeah, I have a good relationship with my client, so I'm not
Right.
worried about it.
Right.
But if that was Joe Schmo in Jacksonville, they're like, okay, great. I don't have to pay my PA now.
Correct.
In their head.
Which is why making sure you follow the DFS guidelines
Yeah.
and that your contract
is
yes.
and
gets that update and
Right.
that information from FAPIA
Yeah.
and the other, and you know, and hear what's going on and ask attorneys what's going on because
Yep.
you're seeing it every day.
Changes, man.
And the changes are going on.
Yep.
Because our contracts have to be enforceable,
Yes.
and we have a right to be an assignee on that client's check
Right.
because we have to be protected.
Right.
You know, it's Florida's a tough state.
It is.
You know, and then sometimes people they get the money and they don't want to pay you, and
Mhm.
you were the reason that you have helped, advocated, fought for, and really negotiated for a good, honest, fair, reasonable. Why should we not get paid?
Right.
We have families too, like everybody else.
Yeah, man.
We're people. We
Yeah.
put our pants on the same way like everybody else, one leg at a time,
Yeah.
and we throw our bodies on the streets, going from Miami to Jacksonville, going Miami to Orlando, going Miami to Panhandle.
Yeah.
I've gone up to Jacksonville and back in the same day.
Oh, shit.
That's a 6.5 up, 6.5 back.
God.
Why? Because my clients mean that much to me.
Yeah,
because they
man.
needed me. So I do what
Wow.
I got to do. And it's okay. And I don't mind that it was that one
You
appointment.
drove up?
Drove up,
God
drove
damn.
back. And the appointment was only like 45 minutes or an hour because it was a re-inspection for something specific. So
Right.
be it. I'm the
Props.
adjuster. That is my job. Now, if
Props.
I have another adjuster who's in the area, they can go on my behalf to
Yeah.
demonstrate as long as they're licensed and we
Sure.
can collaborate.
Yeah.
Like you have your own company, I have my own company, but during a hurricane, we may partner up.
Yeah.
Why? Strength in numbers.
Yep.
And it's also nice to have somebody watching your back.
Right.
I'll go down this block and work with the clients that I got an appointment with. There's this client recommended and asked you to go visit that client. They called you, they set up the appointment so that it's all legitimized and it's honest. Hey, they wanted to meet with me.
Right.
Go out there and let's work together in collaboration.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot.
I
It
think
helps.
that's
and,
really
and
important.
other adjusters need to work together.
Yeah.
You know, we need to cooperate.
Right.
Like when you and I first met.
Yeah, man.
My goal was we're not in competition.
Yeah.
We're brothers and sisters of the same faith.
Yeah.
Help those homeowners and work together. You
Right.
know? And you may come and do appraisals for what work I need because I can't get to it.
Yeah.
Or develop that estimate on behalf of my company.
Right.
But it'll be my work product because I
Yeah.
review every estimate that comes across
Yeah.
my desk.
Yeah.
That is my work product. I finalized it. I made sure it met the requirement of what was damaged.
Right.
And I put my name on it and my company logo on it. And I stand by the product. Why?
Right.
Because that's my job.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I will fight. I'm a fighter. I'm Cuban Irish.
Yeah.
It's built into my,
It's-
my DNA. You know what I mean? And sometimes we fight against each other, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But you know, and I love a good fight, but I love a good collaboration, cooperation.
Yeah. I love
healthy,
resolution,
heated
man. Yeah.
exchange. No problem. I have
Yeah.
no problem. You know, but let's do it professionally.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the up and coming public adjuster, new gen. I say new gen because can I say new gen? And am I still
Next
too- am I
generation,
still-
new gen,
am I-
next
am I-
generation.
Yeah, am I still too green in the field to refer to the young
guys,
ones?
the next guys to get the
yeah,
torch.
yeah. Let's say I'm going on year 4, so maybe I'm still in.
Yeah,
the
you don't have
newbies.
as much of the new car smell.
yeah,
You've got more of the miles of coffee smell.
A little
and-
bit, a
and
little
like
bit.
having to wear shorts because you're living in your car for hours on end.
Yeah.
Buddy.
A lot of PB&Js.
Whew.
So let's talk about those. The
Yeah.
people that are thinking of getting into it, or are in it and just got licensed, or maybe already at the firm and just maybe trying to get some guidance. What would be? Let's start with vetting and interviewing other public adjusting firms before you actually hang your license somewhere. Talk about the importance of that and some red flags maybe to
Gotcha.
watch out for.
Do your research, find out what their reputation is. Ask around. Okay. Try to see first off online, of course, what's their rating. Some have ratings. Some adjusters, small outfits don't have ratings. They don't have the time to get into the tech savvy.
Yeah.
They are now. They're getting it now. But also ask them for references. Don't be frightened to ask a big company. Do you have any clients that have recommended you, letters of recommendation? What do they look like on the website? Um, how much are they going to help you learn? What learning educational capabilities do they have? Are they just going to say, go out in the streets, knock on the door, and bring me claims? Or they're going to say, we're also going to have workshops. We're also going to recommend you join FAPIA. We're also going to recommend you get some additional education. Ask them, what other resources are you going to help me to be better in the field? I want to grow. I don't want to just do the small daily claims. I want to do the small daily claims to learn, keep doing them, do the fire claims next, do the broken pipe cases, do the roof leaks, do the hurricanes, do the floods, that kind of thing. What are your specialties? I love commercial claims. I love the heavy lifting. The more complex, the more enjoyable it is because it's not the same old, same
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
Those things are,
Very
and they're
dynamic.
lucrative,
Yeah,
yes, as
of
a
course.
businessman.
Yeah.
But it's also you get to work with high-end professionals,
Mhm.
business owners, and the satisfaction of knowing that you're getting them back online.
Yeah, man.
That needs to be motivation when you're looking at a company. Maybe you want to maybe not necessarily work for the big company. Maybe you want to work for the smaller guy. We can teach them a lot, hands-on. Take them to claims. Let them go with me on an appraisal. Learn the appraisal right from the gate. Why? Because you're going to look at things differently as an
Yeah,
appraiser.
man.
Because when you
Truly.
get that umpire in the room, he's going to say, "Tell me why."
Yeah,
Don't tell
yeah.
me you got a roof leak. Tell me why.
Yeah, man.
What happened? Tell me
The
why that needs
appraisal
to
is
be
really where
replaced.
I think
Why
you
does
should
that
grind your
window need to
teeth
be
on. Yeah,
removed?
man.
Why are you saying all these windows? Well, that window has to be removed. It got impacted. It got
Right.
damaged. The municipality requires
Matching.
because of matching.
Yeah.
And ordinance and law, and then all those components need to be a part of that. Get your education. Who's going to teach me? Am I going to be thrown to the wolves? That may not be the best thing for the startup, especially with the difficulty that we have with the claims,
Yeah.
with the restrictive language.
No,
and
I
the
think that would be a
policies.
death sentence, and like you're really not.
You'll get disillusioned real quick.
Yeah, yeah, because it used to be, and it's funny when we met, and I've spoken to a couple of other public adjusters that have been doing it a while, and whenever I tell them when I got into it, they're like, "Oh, you got right on time for Ian." It would have been
Right.
and last gold rush of the Florida era,
Right.
if we will, and how it all spun out didn't quite end up that way, but today, for anyone that's trying to become a public adjuster, like it's it really isn't sign everything and then for everything that you sign, throw it all at the wall and see what sticks. Like that does not work.
No.
You're not, I mean, you're going to have great vanity metrics top line. We have 1,000 open claims, but
Are they getting settled?
yeah, or are they like
paying
how many?
out?
Yeah, are any is coverage even being open? Like,
Right. And remember, when the client has to go to litigation on cases, the attorney takes a percentage.
right,
You're taking a percentage.
right,
Does it make sense?
right.
Like the $10,000 water cap losses.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? When I get those and I do those customarily professional
How do you do
courtesy
those?
for
Yeah,
I do those professional courtesy to the client, I know that my percentage is
Right.
limited to whatever it was I negotiated with the client, up to
There you'll
legitimate
negotiate.
20%.
Yeah.
But
You'll play there.
but you have to have the expectations that I'm servicing that client, and that client was that client from 10 years ago. So they've earned that.
Yeah,
They've
of
earned
course.
those chips with me,
Yeah,
and I'll help them out and do the best I can for them on the claim. Sometimes we'll look at, like you'll go to a loss and you'll be like, it's not going to break your deductible. It doesn't make sense. Maintain the property.
yeah,
Fix that section of the roof up. Maintain your home. Clean everything up. Rebuild what needs to be rebuilt so you can have receipts to prove we fixed it. Yes,
yeah,
when the carrier says this looks like there's a section of this roof that was fixed. Yeah, we had a leak. When you have a leak, what do? You fix it. It doesn't justify submitting it as a claim. It's not a when peril created opening.
right.
It's just a daily loss. Something happened. God knows what.
Yeah.
I fixed it. Here's proof of it.
Let me ask you about that because I've run into that a couple of times and different people spin it different ways. But so if you have roof is a great example. So let's say we have storms here all the time, right? With gusty winds all the time.
Mhm.
Some public adjusters will take those. I personally, again, in this climate, I tend not to unless the damage is very severe and
Mhm.
it's a good claim.
And what caused the damage?
Right.
What
Was
caused the
it
roof to leak?
Yeah.
Could have been a branch. Could
Yeah.
have been a coconuts.
Right,
Could have
right.
been something that impacted.
Right.
Yeah.
Which technically would be covered, no? Theoretically,
When
maybe.
peril created
Right.
opening.
So yeah, so
argument
you
can
can
be
play.
made.
You can play. So, but for those, let's say damage is just very minor, doesn't really make sense on the claim side. Homeowner does the repair. does that, and then a hurricane strikes, let's say, and not a major hurricane that blows off the roof, but a Cat 1 that's going to cause some damage, right? Beyond what was repaired. Does that impact the repairability versus replaceability argument? We're getting into the weeds here, guys. This is going to be a
Yeah, yeah,
nerdy
yeah.
question, but how does that affect it?
That's when you have to have experts, because I'm not a
A
licensed roofer.
Got you.
I'm not sure you are,
No.
and we really should not and
Got you.
don't need to be speaking on something we are not an expert on.
I
But
got
get a
you.
licensed roofer. Tell the client, get a licensed roofer. Is it a repairability issue? Is it a replacement issue? And if the guy said this is a 20-year-old roof, there's something called depreciation
Right.
that the carrier will apply. And the schedules are becoming more and more aggressive. You know, if you're a 20-year-old roof, maybe you get 10% of the valuation of the roof because it's so old, you know? That takes into account normal wear and tear.
Right.
Well, wasn't that repair part of the normal wear and tear? Maybe it's a 5-year-old roof. Okay, take into account. Have at it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't hit my client for 50% for a small square that was
Yeah,
fixed.
right.
No, I
got
will
you.
argue with you all day long. Appraisal, if we go into appraisal,
Yeah.
let that be negotiated.
I got you.
You know, that's realistic.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where common sense comes in, and we need a lot more. You know, with everything being so fast, with the technology
Yeah.
and artificial intelligence, and everything's just satellite view of the roof.
Uh-huh.
Did anybody get on the roof? No, why not?
Yeah.
Excuse me, why didn't you get on my client's roof?
Right.
Mr. Carrier, you are responsible to investigate the loss. How are you going to do it from the satellite? How is that a close-up of my client? That client did not warrant a thorough investigation.
Hmm.
The client's not supposed to climb on the roof to give you the photos.
Right.
That is your job as the carrier. They paid the premiums. When there's a loss, you need to investigate.
Question on that. Very, very distinct point there. So I've heard from, this is a Texas public adjuster, so maybe things are different, but his mantra is kind of counter to that in the sense that the carrier is only, and maybe this is Texas, but the carrier is only obligated to investigate what is claimed. They're not obligated necessarily to establish the claim. If that makes, like, you understand? Like, is it that as the public adjuster or the homeowner, the onus is on them to present the claim. This is what I'm claiming.
Gotcha.
And then the insurance company then investigates that. Or is it the insurance company, like you said, are they supposed to go and determine what should be claimed?
I would say great advertisement for why you want an adjuster, a public adjuster.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go through that house,
Right.
and I'm going to go on the roof.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look at the attic crawl space, which a lot of public adjusters don't like.
A lot of
attic crawl
insurance adjusters
spaces.
don't either. Yeah.
No, and I'm going to make sure.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to look around every room, every garage space, all the areas. If it's a roof leak, look up, look on the walls, see if there's impact, windows, depending on what the particulars of the storm that hit that home. And then when the inspection happens, I'll put blue tape on all X marks the spot.
Yep.
Why? Because I'm showing you, Mr. Adjuster, and they love it.
Yeah.
I'm advocating for the insured. Here's the blue tape. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. Where all the areas that we believe are associated with this peril.
Right.
I did my due diligence, my fiduciary responsibility to my client.
Right.
Says it in our contract.
Right.
Okay. Then they've had the chance. Document what they looked at. If they said they didn't want to look at it, document that as well. If they said they're not going to go on the roof, document that as well. And then if the point comes and the time comes, your file shows and represents that we asked them to look at these. They said it's not part of the loss.
Right.
They made a claim determination on site.
Right.
They're supposed to write up the estimate. I think the claim determination comes later on,
After. Yeah.
not 5 minutes into the loss.
Yeah.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Because we're making not necessarily a claim determination, but we're making causation,
Right.
not coverage,
Right.
not the big C coverage,
Yeah.
the little c,
Yeah.
causation. Does
Yeah.
that causation make sense? That's what we talk about in appraisal all the
Right.
time. You cannot talk about coverage in appraisal,
Right.
but we can talk about the causation.
Exactly.
Does this make sense that roof and then that wall with all that water going down makes sense for the peril we're talking about?
Right.
Connect the dots.
Yeah. Chess,
So-
not checkers.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The chess game of what we're doing in it. And again, great commercial.
Yeah.
Give me 5. A fist bump. That is why you need
Yeah.
a licensed adjuster who's knowledgeable,
Right.
because that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And you're asking all the right questions, and we're again together in
Dialogue.
this little conversation, coming up with the answers, and there's a bunch of them
Yeah.
for every scenario.
Right.
You know, and we can scenario.
No, I could do this
all day long.
hours and hours.
Yeah,
Maybe we need to do a repeat, couple, maybe
I
a
can tell
series
you
of
this: nobody else wants to be in the room with us because we'll talk claims all day long and the nuances. But this is also
Yeah.
part of the volume of the education,
Right.
the encyclopedia. For those who know what encyclopedia is these days, of how we learn,
Yeah.
cooperate, collaborate, man.
Yeah, man. Listen, man, this has been truly fantastic. I knew coming in it was going to be a great session and didn't disappoint. So I really appreciate you coming in.
Sure.
I'd like to open the floor to you, just let people know how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
And it'll be this camera.
Okay. So we are happy to serve all of Florida. We know the construction in all of Florida. We've been doing it for 18 years as a Florida licensed public adjuster. We are now in North Carolina, South Carolina, licensed and bonded as we are required. Murphy ETC Claims Consultant. My direct line to me, 305-401-6222. Our website, murphyetcclaims.com. And you can even email me at jcm@murphyetcclaims.com. And you've got a fellow colleague here who knows what he's doing. And I would say, reach out to us. Let us help you and guide you. And then let's see if it makes sense to submit that claim. We are here for you.
Beautiful. There you have it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. James, thanks again for coming by. Catch you
Honor.
on the next one, man.
Honor and a pleasure.
See you guys. Good shit.
Absolutely.
Good shit.